We've actually got 50 people in the room, so we'll get this show on the road, as my dad used to say. Got to say, hey, everybody's checked in. We got a lot of the old school crew in the house. DePaul was first, saying hello, as Taco Cat then followed shortly thereafter. Retired Butcher Boy, Brian Wiacek. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Mike Lackner, Angels Don't Fall. Tyler Pasquale from South Carolina, probably a neighbor of JP's, who also checked in from South Carolina, who I called the Brewmaster. Fatty McButterpants asked about the defense license plate that is from the movie Falling Down. A viewer sent that in. Jonesman 08, he's my go-to guy with airplane questions. Lewis Browning's in the house, as is Padre, Fatty McButterpants, M. Kolba. Sometimes I listen to myself, who speaks for all of us. And then, of course, Hobie Jackson from Sulphur Springs, Texas, the birthplace of J.B. Weld. Daniel Kester's checking in. Mark Miller also. Lewis Browning, I think I said that once. And so here we are. And I will point out to those who don't notice it, there is a different chair on the set, as we say. That is the chair I was sitting in here up till now. I got a new chair, which I'm sitting in now, and I shuffled the old chair over there. You might say, Steve, why didn't you put the new chair on the set? And there's a reason for that, is it doesn't fit. I've mentioned before that the space between, which I think is a song by Dave Matthews, isn't it? Between that desk right there and that bookcase right there doesn't allow for a big old chair. So hopefully this will end the discussion and debate that rages on this channel and elsewhere regarding the chair in which I sit. I started out with a plastic folding chair, moved to a wooden folding chair, and just to get everyone to calm down, I got myself one of those. Maine Coon is checking in from Royal Oak. Maine Coon, of course, is the name of a breed of very large cat. Royal Oak's a cool little town in Oakland County, Michigan, not far from where I grew up, and I worked there, both at a store called Incognito on Main Street, and then later as an attorney in an office on Woodward Avenue at Catalpa. Stephen Etzkorn is checking in from Buckeye Nation, Delphos, Ohio. And Mr. Black Omega 1. Oh, Black Omega 1. Does it have the footrest? This one does. Yes, it does. We'll talk about that in a future episode of Lehto's Law. Mr. Daniel Kester wants to know if I've got hydration, and I always do. I don't want people worrying about me dehydrating on camera. Tom Riddle says, I prefer the old janky chair. Will it make a return? Probably not. You'd be outvoted on that one. So, Harold Kuhlman, why does YouTube open itself to play this? Are you being forced to watch? Is that what you're asking or complaining about? I don't quite get it. Sudi Vaychek, hi, Steve and chat. Power Punch, flunk at Lehto. Not sure what that means. Just me pursuing postcards. Hello from North Alabama. And it jumped on me again. Mindben says you need a throne. Zomkilla, new chair going to increase the stats. I don't know about that. I think it's one of those things that nobody will notice. Although if it became a discussion piece and people had to come over and look at it, perhaps gawking. Mrs. Teresa, 1999's check-in for Geneva, New York. Can't wait until the cruising night. I can't wait till cruising weather is here. We had a cold snap last week that was ungodly cold. It got down below zero several times. Now it's above zero, but it's still not freezing. We got 29 degrees yesterday. We're at 25 right now. But, I mean, that's survivable. But we've got about, I'm guessing, 3-4 inches of snow. I had to break out the snowblower a couple times this week. I can just do 2 passes on my driveway and I'm done. So, Alien EV, where exactly do you keep your shirts? They're right there. They're off camera. They're not a fire hazard, no. Old McDonald has a car. A good snowy afternoon from a few hours north of you. In Michigan? JP Boylo says, hey, we're family. And I feel like we are. One big family. 1970 Scout 800 checking from Montrose, Colorado. We got a town in Michigan called Montrose, and one time I got corrected. So it's not Montrose, it's Montrose. Montrose, not Montrose. And I said, really? You guys actually say it to that point as to where you, and the person said yes. So later I met somebody from Montrose and they said, yeah, I'm from Montrose. I go, you mean Montrose? And they go, what? So you understand that there's absolutely no logic to any of this. L. Jeff from Oshkosh, home of the air show. Harold Kuhlman says, I unlocked my phone and this stream was on. I wasn't even watching YouTube before I locked it. Yeah, that's a special thing I do. For the people out there who are turning their phones on and unlocking them, I'll be the first thing they see. It's kind of like when you wake up and the first thing you see is shocking to you, right? Rick Turner's checking in from Columbia, South Carolina. Also, a lot of people checking from South Carolina today. Motorhead, you hiker something? I see a Spot GPS in the background. That, of course, is a Garmin InReach. It's a really good one. And I got it originally primarily for canoeing on rivers. I did some canoe trips a while back. I put a couple of videos up a long time ago about it. And it was always cool to be able to track where you are using a really good GPS. Mark B says, how about those national champion Buckeyes? Yeah. Remember, I believe it was Woody Hayes who said the only game that matters is Michigan, Ohio State. How'd that work out for you? Nemo with glasses says, you need a sponsor for the chair. Sort of. We'll talk about that. Dean Stevenson, NZ, Kiwi, NZ at 60F here in Dunedin this morning. I can't pronounce some of those words. Sorry. Dan Boyd missed 3 minutes. Yeah, and that's 3 minutes that you cannot get back. Taco Cat says, Steve, will you sell the wooden chair to a collector of Lehto memorabilia? I could do an auction and give the money to charity, but I can't imagine people would actually want to bid on it. I paid $5 for it. Plus, that's a ship it to somebody. Sounds like a pain. Oh, Frank. JC the third. This is greetings from the home of the Eagles. You mean the football team or the rock band? Because some of those guys are from scattered about the country. Skylar Perone's checking in from Raleigh at North Carolina State University, doing some LSAT prep this morning. Oh my God, dude, you're giving me the willies. Yeah, LSAT is a law school test that you take to get into law school. They give you a score, and it's a really weird test. It's similar to the SATs, but it's got a couple different sections, including at least when I took it, a thing called logic games, and they give you these really weird word problems. And they're like 5 people are sitting around a table, and so can't sit next to so and so. Somebody else has to sit to so and so. These 2 people, and then it's like, what is the proper seating chart? And they give you, and it's crazy. I did pretty well on it, but I didn't do as well as I would have liked. I took a LSAT prep class. So that was it. Josiah Hanna says, I'd love to see more canoe and or Upper Peninsula videos. I posted a couple of UP videos last year because I spoke in Calumet at an event, and while I was up there, I shot a video that I put up that was me on the balcony of the Laurium Manor Inn talking about why I was up there. And then I also posted a video of me hiking out by the Douglas Houghton Falls, which are now back open to the public. They've been closed for quite some time. You had to jump a fence to get there. And the fence is marked no trespassing, so they were closed to the public. So Blazer O2LS says, I really wish the hunters that visit this area bothered to use a GPS. I hate needing to go search for them. Yeah, and that's one of the things is some people will act like ignorance helps them. And so if you encounter them, say, hey, you're on private property, they're like, oh, I thought I was on public property. Well, no, there's a sign right there that says private property. I didn't see it. It's bright yellow. Why? What do you mean you didn't see it? So. Devin bounces, check. Are you doing a sound check? Four running away says, I can't read. But ironically, you can write, or are you just typing? Old McDonald has a car. What were the odds that Bo Schembechler would pass away the night before the big game? I've told this story before, but I love it. Bo Schembechler and Woody Hayes were perhaps the two greatest adversaries ever in sports. And Woody at one point in time was Bo's boss. Bo worked for him and came up to Michigan. And they had a great relationship in that they didn't hate each other, but they went at it. And there was a game where Ohio State was going to win 49-0. And on the last touchdown they went for 2 to make it 50. And after the game was over, Bo was ticked off because he's like, you didn't need to do that. And at the press conference, they asked Woody, why'd you do it? Why'd you go for 2? And he goes, because they wouldn't let me go for 3. But when Bo Schembechler died, he died right before the big Ohio State-Michigan game. I saw a photograph of a marquee in town because the game was being played in Columbus. And it said, rest in peace, Bo, R.I.P., Bo. Then below that, it had the 4-letter word F, Michigan. Like, even though it is the rivalry of all rivalries, we've got to respect the guy who just passed away. And so there you go. Stanley Snow Monkey 318 says, I see you have a new chair at the regular studio. Really? Oh, boy. Paul Davis, I saw about 100 deer in a field yesterday in Williamston, Michigan. Then saw the car in front of me hit one. Tough way to hunt. Oh, I actually saw a guy who had just hit a deer yesterday, I believe it was. And about 10 minutes earlier, I'd seen a flock of turkeys out in a field. And we got these cornfields where, the corn gets harvested so that in the fall, all that's left is little stumps about this high of the corn. But apparently turkeys like it out there. And I saw a flock or a herd of maybe 30 or 40 turkeys just cruising around out there. Lion zookeepers checking in from Flushing, Michigan. Just up the road a bit from Flint, Michigan. For the 2 says, cheers, Steve. Angels Don't Fall says, have you heard birds the word? Yeah, I believe that is the word. Janie Segrest, is the new chair headrest going to make finding Ben harder? Probably. In fact, I already put Ben into place, and I went and stood by the camera and realized you couldn't see it because I used to know what my silhouette was, and now my silhouette is off. Old McDonald has a car. Says Rose City is the turkey capital of Michigan, up near Grayling. Rose City. No, not near Grayling. More like near someplace kind of near exit 212, isn't it? More like West Branch. So Sub GR77 is checking in from the state of confusion, not far from Flint. Rob Strecker in Marshfield, Wisconsin. Tom Rogers, I taught my dog to herd turkeys. I bet the dog enjoyed it. Turkeys, not so much, but Fatty McButterpants says Flushing, Michigan, you got to jiggle the handle before you leave. What's weird is how many places are called Flushing. I'm guessing it had a different name back in the old days, like Flushing Meadows and stuff. So, yeah, W. Park says there's still corn on the ground after the field is harvested. So that's what the turkeys are going after. Dan Boyd, though, says the turkeys do their best work on the dinner table. QA Library is now asking, has Steve upgraded his chair? Mark Miller, is herd the technical name for a group of turkeys? No, that's why I used it. I was trying to be comical in a comical way. NZ Kiwi NZ LOL. Do you guys in New Zealand know what turkeys are? Because I know you guys have got kiwis, obviously, but kiwis are smaller. Turkeys are really, really not too smart, large birds. They're famously not that bright, but they're big. And they make good eating, but we've got wild ones running around where I live. So Devin bounces. Pay attention, people. New chair. MHO8. A collection of turkeys is known as a jive. A jive. Hey, excuse me. I speak jive. I watched Airplane 2 last night. Michael Harris is checking in from Barbados. I've been to Barbados. Had fun there. Beautiful beaches in Barbados. I think some famous people have got places there too. Mr. Art Vandalay, I just watched the video you posted where you talked about the new chair. No, I did not. It is not a garage sale pickup. No, it's not. Mia's Tarot says, I sent you a yoga routine to help with your legal cases. I'm not sure how a yoga routine would help me with my legal cases. Oh, Mark B. Isn't there a town in Michigan named Hell? Yes, a town called Hell, a town called Paradise, and a town called Climax. I kid you not. Keeger 4 official says, in high school, I hit a turkey, and my teacher was upset I didn't bring it to school for her to eat. I did see a truck hit a turkey, and it was both spectacular and sad. I was driving on the road that goes basically from 10 goes across from Clare, and then you head up, I think it's 131 towards like Kalkaska and so on. And I was coming one way, and a big old truck was coming the other way, and he was hauling probably 60 miles an hour. And I saw some turkeys just kind of walking along, and all of a sudden one of them decided to kind of like elevate a little bit, and he flapped, and he got right up to windshield height, and just boom, and it exploded like the explosions off the video game Defender. I mean, I remember going, wow, but sad because number one, the turkey didn't survive, and it may have taken out his windshield, but it was pretty wild. Perma, have you ever hunted turkey? No, not at all. Not at all. Greg Noah says yoga reduces stress. Who, me? Do I look stressed to you? Sub GR77. Any thoughts on Jerry Seinfeld not being able to sell that Porsche 917 after it was bid up to $25 million? There was some speculation that that's the car that I believe it was Jerry Seinfeld's car that he sold to the guy who runs Mecum, and then the guy from Mecum was going to sell it again at his own auction, and it didn't hit the reserve. Cars like that are like Van Gogh paintings. It only takes two people to bid them up. But if you don't have two people who want it that badly, then it doesn't get up there. So I saw the car. It's cool, but I'm not sure if it's worth $50 million or whatever the guy wanted for it. Nemo with glasses says Paradise and Climax are both in Pennsylvania as well, but they've also got Intercourse, Pennsylvania. Yeah, I know. Oh, boy. Opinion rat Defender explosions are cool. You have to understand, Williams Defender was one of the coolest video games ever created. It was in the early enough stages where they hadn't ironed out everything yet. And if you got good, you could just play it all day long. And I did. I routinely played a game to where I got bored after 4 or 5 hours, and I just crashed all my planes and put my initials up. And I had the top 10 scores on a video game arcade near my apartment in Bad Axe, Michigan. And I'm this close at all times, this close to buying an upright Defender machine and putting it in my living room. I if someone told me, Steve, I can install a pause button for you, I would do it. I just know it'd frustrate me for being able to play it, and then something happens, and I'm like, I wish I could pause the game, and I can't. So, Duncan Campbell, good morning, Steve. How is your Sunday? It's going pretty good. Old McDonald has a car. Remember when that pitcher threw a fastball and it beamed a pigeon? Yeah, I remember that. And it's a famous thing you'll see oftentimes on like Twitter and Instagram, where there's a guy winding up and he throws, and all of a sudden the perfect 1 in a billion collision. And I think it was a pigeon or maybe a mourning dove. Just poof. Same thing. Bird didn't survive. Paul Harris, what are we, 6th graders with these town names? Men never grow up. Some of the names, the words change over time. The word intercourse used to just simply mean You could also refer to a conversation, just interacting with somebody. Now the interaction is a little different, but back then you'd see that word in print more often. So for the two says a pause button is possible. Yeah, but I need somebody who can actually confirm for me that they can do that without screwing up anything else. And then if they can do that, somebody contact me because I can't tell you how many times I've gone onto eBay or other places and found dealers who sell old school video games. And they go, we've got a brand new, not brand new, but an updated, overhauled, fresh as new upright Defender from 1981. And they're surprisingly affordable. And I'm like, I would enjoy that. I would enjoy that. I can't imagine I'd play it like every single day, but once in a while I've got a couple hours to kill. I could do that. Steve Causey says there's also a climax in Georgia. Okay. Andy New York says I live near Christmas, Florida. We've got a Christmas, Michigan also. It's just outside of Munising, Michigan, up in the UP. Tiny little town, very, very small. But I know they've got a post office there, and they do stuff with the postmarks. If you want stuff postmarked Christmas, Michigan, it'd make more sense if it said North Pole, Michigan, or Santa Claus, Michigan. But I guess Christmas counts. So, L. Jeff, what was a better purchase, the new chair or the Cobra? Well, they're both tools. You use them. You're not there to enjoy them. You're there to use them. Timothy Whalen says, Steve, thanks for the set tour on your second channel. I know you're a busy man, but I think your shelf could use a good dusting. That's patina. That's patina. What's funny is I got one or two people who actually, this is stupid. Why'd you put this up? This is the dumbest thing ever. I'm unsubscribing. If I'd known you'd unsubscribe, I would have put it up sooner. Motorhead says all this talk about towns with sex names, and I live in Deadwood. Oh. Rocks 1989. I'm familiar with the Whistling Diesel channel, but I have not seen his most recent video, so I can't comment on it. Sorry. Yeah, I had originally written January ends or end of January. One or two people know that I tried to put the stream up earlier and had a problem, so I took it down and to redo it. But we are near the end of January. I put darn near to it in the description below the video, but no one ever reads those. Below the video, but no one ever reads those. Believe in Yourself is checking in, saying hello to Steve, Mark Miller, and respected members in the chat. Duncan Campbell, can you get mail postmarked hell? I believe you can. But I'm not sure. Hell, as I've mentioned before, is near a place called Pinckney. And there's a state park there with a great trail on it that's great for hiking and mountain biking. And it's either a 13-mile or 17-mile trail, depending on how you do it. But it's like a roller coaster with just these huge ups and downs. Really smooth dirt. It's not dangerous at all. It's a workout, but it's not dangerous. Because of a viewer of mine who's an attorney in Michigan is also a flight instructor, owns 2 planes, and took me for a flight out of Pontiac Airport, which is pretty cool. Zafar Sayed says, hey, Steve, howdy from Istanbul. Is it Istanbul or Constantinople? Oh, Larry's Diner says, hell is surprisingly tiny. Well, it just feels that way. No, it isn't. Hell is a very small town. Hell is probably about the same size as Christmas, Michigan, or Paradise, Michigan, for all that matters. Dennis Berman says Texas also has a city or town named Hell. Fatty McButterpants is already checking out. Can't stand the heat. Got to run later, folks. Slackerman, Steve, how's it going? Opinion Rat says Frankenmuth is the Christmas city. Frankenmuth is home to a place called Bronner's, which is a store that sells Christmas stuff. And over the years, they've gotten bigger and bigger and bigger to the point now they're huge. It's got to be the largest Christmas store in America. It is huge. And I've been at Frankenmuth many times. I used to work in Frankenmuth. I worked at a radio station, WKNX, that was licensed to Saginaw, and they moved their whole operation to Frankenmuth in like 1984. So I spent a lot of time in Frankenmuth. And Bronner's is just huge, but there's other stuff there. It's also very Bavarian. They got a lot of German stuff there. So there was a guy named Marv Herzog who was a polka leader. He had a polka band in Frankenmuth, one of the biggest polka bands in Michigan. And he actually ran a bunch of businesses in town. There's even a Marv Herzog hotel in Frankenmuth. And at one point in time, he did an afternoon drive on my radio station. So I would drive into work and hear this guy playing polka music. And then the news would come on and I would come on and play oldies. It was the funniest thing ever. But hey, it kind of worked. Pekka Ahonen, hello from near Helsinki. Thank you for checking in, my friend, my Finnish friend. I appreciate that. Janie Seagrass, can you buy a handbasket in hell? Well, you're going to hell in a handbasket. So when you're there, you no longer need it. Yeah, Chris List reminds us that Michigan has the only floating post office in the country. It's zip code 48222. And it is a little mail boat that travels around the Detroit River near all of the activity there because a lot of stuff happens right there. There's Zug Island, which services gigantic ore boats that get loaded or offloaded there. And then also there's other little ports and stuff in there. And so there's so much traffic, and that's like a choke point of the St. Lawrence Seaway, in essence, that if you're on a boat and you say start in Lake Superior and you're going out to the Atlantic Ocean, you'll go through that little stretch. You have to. And so they've actually got a little mail boat, and about once every year or so, somebody does a story about it, public, one of those personal interest type stories. But hey, check out the mail boat, and they talk to postmasters on board his ship, the 48222. So, Fat Blue with the PH. I'm here, Prof. Steve. Thank you. So, Lowell Riggs I am says I've got to take off myself. I need to take a shower and leave town briefly. Is there somebody chasing you? Do we need to know about this? Terrell Cockram says Zender's Chicken. Zender's is one of the restaurants in Frankenmuth that's extremely well known. It's a landmark. They've been there forever. And so Kane just saw the chair video. Oh, that. Yeah. Oh. Jones Man says WKNX is now WJMK, which is now an oldies station registered to Saginaw Bay City with its transmitter in Bridgeport. Actually, a long history as to how it was bought and sold over the decades. But is WKNX now WJMK? Is it 1210 a.m. or is it a different frequencies? I believe that frequency got changed at one time or another. And so the call letters, they may have followed the change in frequency. They might not have. I'm not sure. Continue the research, my friend. Helium. Hello again, Steve, from the Sonoran Desert, Tucson, Arizona. Red Fox Man says also a climax in Minnesota. Okay. John Christofich, do you have any snow in Michigan? Yes, a couple inches. It fell earlier in the week. Old McDonald has a car, says I know a couple of guys that work on that mail boat. I guess there'd have to be, right? It can't be a one-man operation. So Ryan Holtzinger says 90% of the Upper Peninsula is covered in trees. Well, yeah, but it's not all thickly forested. But yeah, there are some big forests up there, national forests and state forests. Robert Adams came in late. What did I miss? Oh, it's so hard to say. Born free, I was born in Central Michigan. Are you referring to a location in Central Michigan or a town called Central? I believe there's a town called Central Mine. up in the UP, but that's a ghost town. Yeah, Red Fox Man says we have also got a town called Nimrod, and I wear a shirt on camera. It's in the rotation that says Nimrod on it, and I think it's from the town, but it may also be the mascot because there's a town in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan whose high school mascot is the Nimrods. Because remember that Nimrod was a mighty warrior king in the Old Testament of the Bible. It later on came on to have a derogatory meaning, like a dummy or something, but it was at one point in time a mighty warrior king. Brian WC says Elaine can't dance. Well, she can. She just doesn't dance in a way that is aesthetically pleasing to other people. Oh, Doug Jones, is the groundhog going to see his shadow? The Groundhog is the biggest scam on earth. Now, Groundhog Day is one of the greatest movies ever made, but the Groundhog is the biggest scam on earth because he always sees his shadow because he's always popping out that many weeks before the first day of spring. But people don't want to talk about that. They want to talk about the cute little fuzzy groundhog, which, as you'll recall, I had one that terrorized me for about 24 hours. And so I have mixed emotions about groundhogs. Dan Boyd, I believe, is calling out a song. I was born in Saginaw, Michigan. And I believe Saginaw also made it into a song by Simon Garfunkel. Saginaw just has a nice 3-syllable ring to it. Saginaw, Michigan. Brian Blackwell, thank you, Steve. Appreciate that. Christopher Penrod says, I once got a postmark from hell, but it's from Grand Cayman, not Michigan. Is there a town called Hell in the Grand Caymans? Oh, boy. It jumped on me again. Yeah, the waters meet Nimrods. Jim Naden. Jeez. It jumped. I was trying to read as it jumped past my eyes. MH08, 100% of the UP is covered with snow. Oh, I guarantee you it is. I've seen they are buried in snow. They are being crushed under the snow right now. Lion Zookeeper, what were your roles at the Flint radio stations? I was a disc jockey. I was a disc jockey in Flint, Saginaw, Frankenmuth, also Lansing, and as a talk show host in Detroit and Flint. Detroit at 2 different stations, Flint at 1, and also briefly in a place called Bad Axe, Michigan, where I was actually there for a couple of years. Not briefly, but very early in my career. J. AUH2O, I'm guessing Goldwater. Have you ever been to Drummond Island? Yes, a couple times. You cross the Mackinac Bridge, go up a little ways and hang a right. You wind up going across the northern shore of Lake Huron, and you get to the end. There's a little town called Detour, and there is a ferry that will take you across to Drummond Island. Drummond Island is one of the bigger islands up there. It's really cool. It's got a lot of history to it. There was a military presence on Drummond Island in, I think, the late 1700s or at least the early 1800s. I believe it was technically playing a role in the War of 1812. I could be wrong about that. But they do talk about the British presence on Drummond Island a long, long time ago. So Roxanne says, yes, there is a hell in Grand Cayman. Interesting. I did not know that. American from the Grind says the Groundhog Day movie was great. It really does explain a lot what people go through. I've watched that movie so many times. I can't even begin to tell you. It's pure genius. It is absolutely pure genius. G Keyman 565. The only thing Groundhog worries about is whether or not he sees Steve Lehto. It's like a Chuck Norris joke, you know. Dan Boyd says there's a Nimrod Drive in Loveland, Ohio. Robert Torre hitchhiked all the way from Saginaw. Zafar Syed says, let me know if you want me to bring back a glass lamp or lantern or a silk rug. Apparently, those are the top 2 things that foreigners buy here in Istanbul. Yeah, it's the touristy stuff, you know. Oh, gee, I'll get a genie lamp and a rug, you know. Ryan Holtzinger says there's a Tittabawassee Township in Michigan. Yeah, and that's based on a native name. There's also Tittabawassee River. The Tittabawassee River is a very large river, and that was the river, of course, that had the dams on it that gave way a while back and flooded the towns of nearby places, including Sanford, Michigan. So, David Persons just gave us a list of town names from Texas. I wanted to make sure they weren't dirty. Dime Box, Bigfoot, Gun Barrel City, Ding Dong, Uncertain, Oatmeal, and China Grove. China Grove made famous in a song. Rocks In like the Groundhog Day movie, or at least she said it was a classic, so I hope she did. Big Kappa. Hi, Steve. Hi, Big Kappa. Good to see you. Josh Jagmina says the town called Paradise in California was almost totally destroyed by the Camp Fire back in 2018. Yeah. Zafar says, I thought it was a chipmunk. No, it was a woodchuck. Chipmunks are small. A chipmunk is nothing more than a glorified mouse. I mean, I'm joking, but a chipmunk ain't that big. This is a woodchuck. And so, like, if you had a chipmunk get into your garage, you could close the door and you could probably get out because they can squeeze through that tiny little hole where the door closes and get in and out. I've had friends that had chipmunks in their garage. They can't get out because they get them out and close the door and they come back in. But a woodchuck is bigger. A woodchuck is probably a little heavier than a cat, but bulkier. Because cats can often squeeze through things. And I don't think woodchucks can. Woodchucks are more diggers, and because of that, they have like shorter little legs, and they don't run real good when you're chasing them at night. Doug Jones, how did disc jockey come about? As jockey refers to someone riding a horse. Well, a jockey is somebody who is riding something. Although a person who's riding an elephant can be a mahout. Just throw that out there for you. But, these refer to guys who pumped gas as pump jockeys, so it's just somebody who's working with and manipulating something. It is an odd one, but what else going to call us? In between music, radio announcers. Ember Miss 69, what kind of comedy is your cup of tea? Perhaps the greatest comedian of all time is Stephen Wright. I always loved Stephen Wright. I like the fact that he came out with a completely different style of comedy. And I mean, you can read his jokes and you go, oh, that's Stephen Wright. I saw him live one time and it was insanely entertaining. I also liked Norm Macdonald a lot. And I think that Norm Macdonald wasn't as well known as some other comedians. Because most people only knew him from being on Saturday Night Live doing the Weekend Update, and he got fired. And then he, of course, had the greatest line of all time when after they fired him, a couple of years later, they invited him back on to be the guest host. And during his opening monologue, he said, what's interesting? I'm hosting Saturday Night Live right now. And a couple of years back, I was on this show, and they fired me because they said I wasn't funny. Now, years later, here I am hosting it, which implies that I am funny. He goes, I got news for you. I haven't gotten any funnier. His delivery was ideal. So, Mark B says, pumping gas, we call ourselves petroleum engineers. Yes, I've heard that one as well. There's all kinds of those euphemisms for different jobs. You want to make it sound better, I'm in security. It turns out it's a junkyard dog, 90 Knots points out that the Germans do, in fact, love David Hasselhoff. Which is something Norm Macdonald said quite a bit. Keelium I saw Stephen Wright last year. Is he touring? Or is he just playing someplace? I'm curious. I've not seen him play any place near me in a while. I saw him at Meadowbrook near Detroit. I hate to say it, like 25 years ago. And I remember the show was sold out. And I don't remember if he had a warm-up act or what. And it was just funny. A guy, I've been to so many shows. It was like a wall of amplifiers and stuff. This guy walks out and there's a stool, a bottle of water, and a microphone. And he just walks back and forth. I mean, unbelievable. Michael Watreed says Rodney Dangerfield. Rodney Dangerfield, yeah, old school guy. I liked him a lot also. Rodney was fascinating because he had that shtick he did about having, getting no respect. I just realized my microphone's off, isn't it? Hang on. Right about there. Okay. And if you can come up with a thing like that, I mean, that was his entire career. And it worked for him, So I love that guy. He's also great in the movies he was in, not least which was Back to School with Oingo Boingo playing at the dorm party, which, by the way, I mentioned bands that people may or may not know in a recent video. I forgot which video it was. And I mentioned that Oingo Boingo, most Americans east of the Rockies only know them for the one or two songs like Weird Science. And of course they played in the movie Back to School, and they were and they played Dead Man's Party, which is their signature song, Dead Man's Party. They don't tour anymore. The band broke up. Danny Elfman now makes movie music and soundtracks, and he of course did the theme song to The Simpsons. Probably made more money off the theme song to The Simpsons than everything else he's done put together. So don't know what to tell you beyond that. So James Chamelix says I could give the woodchuck my wooden chair. Now, that's actually an interesting point. The problem is I don't know where he lives. I've seen him out in front of my house, and I've seen him out behind my house. But he's always keeping his distance. I think he's realizing that, hey, there's a zone of danger. If I stay out of the zone of danger, that crazy guy won't chase me at night. So, Keelim says Stephen Wright was in Tucson at the Fox Theater. Huh. Michael M. agrees on Oingo Boingo. Oh, Dan Boyd says, no, they're called just Boingo now. Well, the band broke up. They don't exist anymore. What do you mean they're called Boingo now? I've got a stack of CDs that say Oingo Boingo on them. So I know their last 2 CDs, Dark at the End of the Tunnel and Live, were listed as Boingo, but still. 858 Bill says George Carlin was an absolute genius. Yeah, Carlin was too. Carlin likewise. There's a really good documentary about George Carlin, and I forgot what it's called. I feel so bad. I forget things like this. DMS KMC says the singer for Oingo Boingo, that'd be Danny Elfman, wrote the theme for The Simpsons. George Carlin, there's a documentary about him, and it's fascinating because his comedy evolved over time. Because he started out in the old days when people didn't do that much political comedy. And he was originally just a typical stand-up comic. And he started getting edgier and more political. And what we think of as George Carlin near the end, very, very different than what he sounds like at the beginning. But I admire somebody who can evolve, whether it's a comedian or a musician or whatever art you do. If you can, improve and do something like that along the way. Yeah, David Person, Oingo Boingo Dead Man's Party was in the film Back to School. Sometimes I listen to myself. Mitch Hedberg is one of my favorites. Mitch Hedberg, and he's passed away. Mitch Hedberg was fascinating, though, because he had kind of a Stephen Wright edge to his stuff, but it wasn't like he had his own personal style. He did. Mitch Hedberg did. And very, very funny. And again, a very unusual delivery, but it didn't matter because he was so funny. Angels Don't Fall. So I've got 8 chainsaws. Well, I've got 2, but I didn't know we were having a contest. Oh, boy. Bob Blah Blah says George Carlin was a skeptic. And some people would call him a critic of modern society. Motorhead says I saw George Carlin once and it was bad. He was trying new material. I know a lot of comedians, they have old material, which like Stephen Wright can get away with old material, but they'll mix in enough new stuff that's funny to make it work. But obviously, how do you get old material without having new material that you work on? Mrs. Teresa, what is your t-shirt size? XXL. double. So what's funny is at the end of every single video I post on my main channel, it has my P.O. box address and my t-shirt size. So if you ever forget, check a video, you'll see it. Okay? Okay. John Christofich, are you a criminal or civil attorney? Primarily civil these days. All I do for the most part is lemon law, consumer protection type stuff. In my career, I've handled criminal cases, I've handled civil cases, I've done jury trials, I've been in federal court, state court, I've done all kinds of stuff, but I'm practicing law now for 34 years. 34 years. So JP says Mitch Hedberg had extreme stage fright. Did he say that? Because that might be like his answer to, was how he was doing it. I mean, he was not coming out there like an extrovert getting in your face and screaming and yelling. He was walking around off with his head down saying stuff, but it was so funny people would laugh. BC 65925. Bill Corey says Matt of Matt's Off-Road Recovery has a collectible Corvair. He's looking for someone to give him an estimate on its value. I left a comment on his video that you'd probably know someone. I know a couple people. In fact, I know somebody who runs a Corvair club here in Michigan. And my good friend Mark Lieberman, also who runs Nostalgic Motoring, often helps people place collector cars with the right people for the right price. So there you go. Vernon Turner, do you want your t-shirt to be made from old or new material? Well, if it's clean, that's all I really care about. I'm not going to wear a t-shirt that's made out of like fiberglass. That's why I wear these. These are so comfortable. That's why I wear these Eddie Bauer t-shirts. They're so comfortable that I like comfortable shirts. Mr. Bush Wookie says that Mitch was off his butt on the H. I believe there were rumors that he may have been abusing some substances. Ryan Holtzinger says my fake plants died because I did not pretend to water them. David, Domini, Fowler, evening, Steve. Always nice to listen to your voice while I'm making videos. Mr. Fowler, thank you for checking in. I appreciate it. I'm glad I spotted you. David, of course, is the guitar player on the right from the audience viewpoint in Aussie Pink Floyd. And I've seen them play live 3 times, including once at Royal Albert Hall, which I'll never forget because Mr. Fowler got me out on stage during the sound check, and I got to take my picture out there. Royal Albert Hall. Steve Lehto. But David's got an amazing studio. And I shot a video in his studio, so go back and look for it. It was a lot of fun. We shot it on an extremely valuable camera, and it came out really, really nice. We had to dumb it down, I think, to make it work on YouTube in terms of its resolution. But David is a wizard when it comes to recording music, recording bands, and he produces music, and he puts up videos on his channel about how to make the equipment work. And that's the thing, is that nowadays, with the equipment they've got, there's so much stuff you can do, but it takes someone, like the talent that somebody's got with their musical equipment is one thing, but it takes somebody with an equivalent amount of talent running the studio to get what that person's doing recorded properly. That's what David also does. So check out his channel. He's got his own channel here on YouTube, especially if you're into music production, sound recording, things of that nature. David Domini Fowler. Please check him out. I'm currently reading the book called Brothers by Alex Van Halen. And he tells the story about him growing up with his brother, Eddie, and how they formed the band Van Halen. And it's fascinating hearing the stories because, these are just, he tells the story starting in before they're in school in America, because they came over from Europe on a boat. And then when they were here, their parents made them take piano lessons and then like violin lessons. And eventually they drifted over to the instruments they would get famous for, the guitar and the drums. And they talk about going into the studio and recording for the first time back in, the 70s. And it's fascinating because things have changed so much now. But it's an amazing story. I'm not done with the book yet, so I don't know how it ends. But I saw Van Halen live twice, including once in Detroit for the tour that he's talking about right now in the book where I'm reading. So Mark Miller says, what was the line Stephen Wright came up with? I'd kill for a Nobel Peace Prize award. I believe that was the award he said he'd kill to get. So, oh, Jason Finch, Dr. Salty, good afternoon. Steve, sorry I'm late. Terrell Cockram says, I saw a post. Someone was looking for a lawyer to sue an auto shop for shoddy work. All I could think about is your lug nut video. In Michigan, it's difficult to sue car repair places because of that. So, Taco Cat says this Finnish word is the longest single word palindrome. Saipuakivikauppias. I hope I just didn't swear in Finnish, but I might have. Hazel Montgomery, did you like your parents' or grandparents' music of their day? You know, the interesting thing is that my mom and dad weren't terribly into music in that sense. They didn't have records or things like that. We had records that we put in a record player, but my parents didn't. My dad played the piano quite a bit, but he loved playing ragtime because he found it challenging. And so a lot of times, I remember the weekends in particular, we had more time. He'd be down in the basement where our piano was, knocking out like the Maple Leaf Rag and stuff. And but a very, very big generational gap between me and my parents and the music. I listened to the music they listened to, I'm pretty sure. So Ratti, greetings from Espoo, Finland. Thank you for checking in, my friend. I appreciate that, especially from Finland. Jay Klein was just watching the 24 Hours of Daytona. Or as Stephen Wright said, I went to a store that said open 24 hours and it was closed. And I asked the guy, what's going on? He goes, yeah, 24 hours, but not in a row. Oh, Robert Adams, I sold my 67 Plymouth Satellite in the Howell, Michigan area in 1978. Wish I could get it back. Yeah, sadly, it's probably long gone. It was driven on Michigan roads, probably rust and whatnot. Art S., rest in peace, the folding chair. Do you know what I should do? Is I should have a big bonfire, and it'd be like Burning Man, but it'd be burning chair. But I don't know if that'd be a great way to honor that chair. We'll see. Chuck White had the Barrett Jackson auctions on at 2:00 today on the History Channel. It will be. David Dominic Fowler says, cheers for the shout out. Wasn't expecting that. Hey, you step into my chat, you get what you get, my friend. So, oh boy, Bob blah blah. I had to listen to swing bands and swooners for dinner every night. That'll do it. That'll do it. That's funny. T. Carlson 0290 says, ever see Alex and Eddie speaking Dutch in an interview? No, I have not, but I'm sure it's happened because they toured over there, especially very early in their career. And G. Keyman 565 says that big long Finnish word means soapstone merchant, i.e., a person who sells and is in the business of selling soapstone. Keely and my dad played Scott Joplin too. Randy Pavos is sending you a double XL t-shirt soon. Excited for you to get it. Well, thank you. I actually got 2 or 3 shirts this week. They haven't made it in the rotation yet. They got to go through the wash and all that. Jay Klein says the Penske Porsche won overall, second in a row. It still freaks me out to see the word Penske, not just from the Penske files on Seinfeld, but Penske is known to people in Michigan as a Chevy dealer in Southfield, Penske Chevrolet. And then later on, Penske just kept expanding. And he took the money that from his businesses and started racing cars. And I remember when he showed up at Indy, and I'm like, what's he doing down there? And of course, now he's, worldwide known as a racing guy. 90 knots. Have you ever been to Burning Man? No, I have not. Have you? Padres' guide on Dish is not showing Barrett Jackson on History. That's odd. I'd poke around. They might have it on another channel, but I watched it the other day on the History Channel. I'm pretty sure that's where I saw it. Pekka Ahonen says the hardest word in Finnish is. I noticed the word kilowatt in there. Is that a word made from an English word? Kolmi iva hekke lowatti tunti mittari. And I'm guessing it means something to the effect of a high-powered transmitter or something. Please tell me if I'm right. So, Hazel Montgomery, mom had control of the TV when Lawrence Welk came on. Heard the closing song so many times I can't forget it. Yeah, Lawrence Welk was one of those things where he had this audience of people who just loved him. And young folk would come along and go, what is this? Why is this on television? Dan Boyd says Roger Penske was party to the purchase of the Detroit diesel division from GM in the late 80s. I knew that because a very good friend of mine has a business that Roger Penske helped him with at one point in time and invited him over to see Detroit Diesel to show him how it was done. Oh, boy. Ronnie Dowdy says some of the comments are so funny, and some of them are all caps, too. Ember Mist. Yesterday, I went with my family to an RV show, and one of the many things going through my mind was Steve's voice talking about the perils of owning an RV. I haven't been to an RV show in a long time. I did go to a couple a while back, also boat shows. Oh, my God. Go to boat shows and go find the biggest boat in the building and walk around as if you've got money and see if you can convince them you've got money. 90 Knots was the Burning Man one time. So did you do the whole experience? Like, were you camping on the dirt and the sand? How long were you there? Lion Zookeeper says Barrett Jackson is also live on YouTube. And Lowell Riggs IM says we weren't forced to watch it, but you had only one TV. Oh, no. Join the club. I remember we had our one TV in the basement. Had to go down and sit in a corner of the basement and watch TV because my parents weren't too crazy about modern television either. Ratti says it's a 3-phase electric meter. Okay, I guess the electricity because I saw the kilowatti in there. Oh, boy. Aldo Leva, hello, Steve. Greetings from sunny Mexico. Yeah, I could use some of that sunshine right about now. Joe Hayes says the cool thing about boat shows is that good salesmen know that rich people can look like bums. Yeah, and so they'll kind of look for other clues. But do you own a boat now? Oh, you do. What kind of boat do you own? And make up something, something the size of the Queen Mary, So Dan Boyd says Roger Penske was kind of forced to add vinyl to the roofs of his 69 Z28s in the Trans Am series because he had acid dipped them too much. The metal was too thin. But it seems to me that adding vinyl might be putting weight back on and also possibly not as aerodynamic. But I don't know. There's all kinds of stories going around about things people did back in the good old days of cheating. Joe Hayes, sorry about all the caps. Dan Boyd, didn't Lawrence Welk cover One Toke Over the Line? If he did, I would love to see that. G. Keyman 565 says that the longest place name in the U.S. is a big long word. It's a 45-letter name for a lake in Webster, Massachusetts. I'd have to imagine that that's probably a native word. I'd have to guess. I know there's some words like that over there in Great Britain in particular. So user CS 7263, hello 7273. Hello, Steve, been a subscriber since before 100,000. I love your enunciation of the letter H. You know what's funny is I don't get that comment very often, but occasionally I do when I'll say the word like white. or which. And white is, of course, spelled W-H. And many people say white, but they're not pronouncing the H. But people then say, well, Steve, if you put the H first, go white, you're mispronouncing it. Check the pronunciation guide in the dictionary. I think they'll tell you that a correct pronunciation is HW. So G. Keyman says that big long name is the Nipmuc language and translates to fishing place at the boundaries or neutral meeting grounds. And Vernon Turner says, and you can go there if you'd like. I hope to go fishing at the boundaries. Oh. Kegger 4 official says, my aunt sold yachts. She told me she checked shoes and watches. So Buana Dave 76 is status quo rules. And that again is a great example of a band. Most people in America don't know who they are. Pictures of Matchstick Men is the only song that got any airplay over here. They were huge in England. And in fact, for those of you who are into Live Aid, I watched some great video of Live Aid yesterday on the YouTube. And Status Quo had broken up and they reunited for Live Aid. And I read the book that Bob Geldof wrote about Live Aid called Is That It? And he had talked them into reuniting to be there. And he also got the surviving members of Led Zeppelin to come out and play. And then they contacted Huey Lewis and the News. And their manager said, well, how much are you going to pay us? And Bob Geldof goes, we don't pay you to show up. It's for charity. And Huey Lewis's manager actually said, no, Huey doesn't play anywhere for free. We don't care if these other bands are playing for free. Huey gets paid. And they said, okay, and just didn't invite Huey Lewis. Now, it turns out there were other people who didn't play despite the fact they were asked to play and they could have if they wanted to. But Huey Lewis went down in history as being the band that demanded to get paid to play at Live Aid. And the promoters said no. So Helium says, my friend uses Sheboygan as a curse word. He always says, holy Sheboygans, among other Sheboyganisms. Well, and there's also Sheboygan spelled with a CH, which is a common thing where a word phonetically, they sound alike, but they're spelled slightly differently because they were taken from native languages and then converted over to English spellings. Valerie Ann says, One Toke Over the Line on the Lawrence Welk Show is on YouTube, so you may check that out. And Chris Tope says it's there described as a modern spiritual. Is that what we're talking about? This is a spirit here? 99, how do you pronounce H-E-R-B? Well, it's one of those things where you can say herb or herb, and usually you say herb and move along, and you don't hit it that hard. So, James Scott, is it taboo to comment on that comfy-looking chair in the background? Yes, but it is not a comfy chair, because the comfy chair is used by the Spanish Inquisition. That's a little different. Travis Eastlicks is glad I finally got your live show. G. Keyman says, yeah, it's okay to talk about the chair. Yeah, it was just bothersome. All the people would go, oh my God, that's your chair? And after the first couple hundred times it happened, it kind of got slow and not quite exciting to hear. So yeah, Sig 226, don't forget about Peaches and Herb. David Dominic Fowler, nobody expected you to talk about the Spanish Inquisition. Bring me the comfy chair. Just me pursuing postcards says I'm retiring this Friday and I got summoned for federal jury duty the following week. Looking forward to both. The federal jury duty is probably a little more interesting and probably a little more well handled. I've heard all kinds of stories about state courts and juries and being called and sitting around and not doing anything. Federal judges just really, really, they run a tight ship usually. Manitoba Misanthrope says, of course, that no one does expect the Spanish Inquisition. Thank you, Cardinal Fang. David E. Pearsons. FLK says, okay, just don't bother to answer questions you don't like. What do you think I'm doing here? 99 says, I went to a Huey Lewis concert in grade school and I didn't pay to go. See, that's the irony here. See, they wanted to get paid to be at Live Aid and they didn't, so they didn't go. You didn't pay to see them, but you got to see them. I still like one song of theirs. I think Do You Believe in Love is a good song. Everything else, don't care for it. But again, if you like it, that's great. That's great. Helium says it could be worse. You could be on a grand jury. Grand juries are probably more interesting, though, but usually it's longer. I know somebody who got summoned to grand jury duty about a year or two ago, didn't get picked, but went through the whole introductory process. And they basically said, you're going to be here, I think it was one afternoon a week, just indefinitely. Like Wednesday from noon till 5 for months. And it's like, what? It's a big commitment. QA library, you get paid to do jury duty in the U.S. Yes, but it's de minimis, as I like to say. Not a lot of money. It's often like 10, 15 bucks a day, or sometimes it's a couple bucks plus mileage. So Charles Widmore says $5 a day. Yeah, and it varies from state to state. Also, it's district court, federal court, circuit court. Theodore Benson says Michigan's Upper Peninsula is home to some of the oldest rocks on Earth, dating back over 3 billion years. But is that rocks from when they were born as rocks, or rocks as when they arrived on Earth? Because didn't the bulk of Earth start out on Earth? Just curious. Bill Thomas, my friends, hid in the trunk to save money at the drive-ins. Oh, that's an old one, yeah. That one, and also you sneak stuff in the trunk, if you know what I mean. So, Kung Fu Grip, do people on juries have to look at extreme graphic evidence? Yes, yes. And so it's not uncommon that during jury selection, you will be asked, by the way, just so you know, this case involves a grisly murder. And the crime scenes are horrific. The photos are, and you will be asked to see them. If anybody here is so squeamish that they will not be able to look at them without being emotionally affected or otherwise, please let us know. And I'll tell you right now, like, I have no trouble looking at that stuff now because I'm an attorney. I've spent 33 years looking at all kinds of stuff. But I can picture some people be like, no, I cannot look at that. I can't. And so if you legitimately can't and a judge believes it, you'll be excused for cause. So Bob blah blah says, is the 0 hour the beginning of time or the end of time? Well, in the grand scheme, it can't be the end because we haven't reached it yet, right? Eric Herreros has been watching you for over a decade now. Good to see you still going. If that's true, which is possible, by the way, that means you watched videos I put up at the very beginning when I had like 3 subscribers. Bon Gondor, what's the story behind the black California license plate? It's right there. Hang on, I got to go this way and right there. That is a manufacturer plate for Shelby. It's a manufacturer. It's a replica of a manufacturer's plate for Shelby. Mrs. Teresa said, I always wondered what it would be like to be on jury duty, but unfortunately I can't do it because of my visual impairment. Yeah, that's unfortunate because so many people want to get out of jury duty that when you hear that somebody be happy to do it, but they never get called, it's kind of like, oh, that's too bad. But I know people who've been called several times and don't mind. But by the way, I'm pouring myself the drink here. It's not alcoholic. Don't worry about it. But Chris Cadman, hello from your neighbor from the north. Point Edward, just got in from riding my dirt bike on the ice. Do you have studs on the tires? Still can't feel my toes. I can put my feet on the heat vent and tune in. Johnny Knoxville's in the house. Good to see you, my friend. Became a subscriber in 2017 when you had 34,000 subscribers. The good old days. Back when I could put up a video and nobody'd watch it, literally. Or a couple people would. Knock Knock, 1975 says I started watching at about 43,000. Vernon Turner, I still only have 3 subscribers. But are you trying to get more, or do you just hang out on YouTube? The Duder is checking in from Iowa, making chili with his grown son. There you go. There you go. Silver Mountain for jury. How much time do you get for lunch? A lot of courts take a lunch break for an hour and a half. It's not uncommon that they'll break at 11:30 and say come back at 1, or noon, come back at 1:30, that kind of thing. L. Grant Nelson says, after being called for jury duty 2 years in a row, they excluded me from the list. I've heard so many stories, and I know stories that are absolutely true, but people go, oh, it's not true. But I actually know a guy who got summoned for jury duty. There was a really bad snowstorm, and as he was running into the courthouse a few minutes late, he went to check in, and the woman goes, oh, are you? And my friend said his name, and she goes, I was just filling out the warrant for your arrest. Thank you. And she put it away. And he goes, it's the first time that he'd ever been called, and he was 20 minutes late, but there was this much snow on the ground. And it's just, come on. And so, I mean, I've heard so many stories like that but it varies from place to place. I also know somebody who got called several times, and this person was a foreman at a plant where if he had to take the day off, they would shut a shift down and send people home. And he was complaining about this, and somebody said, why don't you call the court and see what they say? And he called the court and told them that. And he said, oh, really? Okay. Put that in writing on letterhead from your company, and we'll take you off the list permanently. Never got called again. So Brian Fullerton found me in 2020 and watched all of the archived videos that you had up at the time. I've actually had people tell me that they spent weeks watching all my old videos or listening to all the old podcasts I have up on iTunes. And that'd be a grind after a while. But hey, if you want to, you can. Johnny Knox says, hey, if you're the bailiff, try not to shoot the judge. It's a reference to an actual case, I believe. Aldo Leva says, I got to Steve's channel because of Louis Rossman, the right to repair guy. Yeah, I was on Lewis's channel one time. I was on Sam Crack's channel one time, and I was on Ed Bolian's Vin Wiki a couple times, 11 times. And I know a lot of people came to me from those channels. So that's pretty cool. Oregon expats checking from southern Germany. Glad you could do that, my friend. QA Library, my jury service meant to last 2 weeks. The case ended up going into 7 weeks. It happens. It happens. I can tell you that I saw part of the McMartin preschool trial in California when I went to law school. Jury trial lasted, I believe, 5 years. 5 years. And they had told the jurors, by the way, you're going to be here for several years. Can you afford to do that? And a couple of them actually worked for big corporations that said, yes, we can do that. So 90 says the only time I was called to jury duty was for a case being litigated by the firm I currently worked at. I assume that they had to let you go, right? Oh, boy. Morgan Free says, I remember seeing you on Vin Wiki. Joe Hayes says, I don't remember when it was, but I either helped you get over 50 or 100K. It was years ago, though. Oh, Kung Fu Grip says, you're on Rick Gore's channel. Think Like a Cop. Yes, I was. Yes, I was. Haven't talked to Rick in a while. There have been a few other channels that I've done little guest things on. There was a guy named Brandon who had a channel. I forgot the name of his channel. I did a whole bunch of stuff with him because he asked me questions about, making videos, and we just had these great conversations. So, Red Fox, man, I've been asked this before. I've been called for jury duty, but never been selected. I know attorneys who have been selected. So you don't get automatically out of it if you're a lawyer. And I was happy to do it, but I just didn't get selected. Silver Mountain, are all jury pools pulled from voter rolls? Many of them are, but not all of them. They can pull them from any source they consider to be a good source. So, good citizens as police are usually excused. Well, it depends. What if you have a civil case that doesn't involve police? Steve, do YouTubers get a 1099 or some form to do their taxes from Google/Alphabet? Yes. I actually printed mine off this morning. I forgot what the form is called, but it's one of those forms that you get when someone pays you money over a certain amount. It's not a salary because I don't work for them, but it's something else. And yes. So yeah, the IRS knows that I make a couple bucks off of YouTube. Jerry C., any concerts you're planning on going to in the near future? Well, in the near future, let's just call that next year. I've got tickets to see Billy Idol, Rod Stewart, and a couple others. So yeah. Garrett M., I've watched some videos. Happy to subscribe and follow. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Johnny Knoxville says, if it's over $600, you got to file a 1099 miscellaneous, probably. That sounds about right. But I mean, I also, like, for instance, I sell books through Amazon, and I get one from them. Then my publishers all send me paperwork. My bookkeeper hates me. No, he actually likes me. Brianna CC, do you make more money off YouTube or practicing law? They both treat me well enough to where I haven't given up either one yet. Vernon bets that this is colored red. This is actually orange. This is one of my orange solo cups. They do make them in orange. Johnny Knoxville says the eBay and Etsy tax went into effect January 1. Anything over $600? Because didn't it used to be $500? Old McDonald has a car. Says Rod Stewart was at the Palace in Auburn Hills, which is no longer there. Was a good concert. I've heard he does good concerts. You can find very, very good footage of him live in concert. I just want to make sure that he does two songs, and I've heard he does not do them both anymore. Downtown Train is one, and I Don't Want to Talk About It is the other. Now, they're both covers, obviously. Downtown Train is Tom Waits. I Don't Want to Talk About It is Crazy Horse. But he has done them live, but his most recent set lists do not include Downtown Train, and I really wish you'd do that. So Art S. didn't realize Billy Idol was still alive. Yeah, and he's still rocking, too. In fact, I saw footage of him at a concert about a year or two ago with his shirt off. And I'm like, oh, my God. When you're that old, you shouldn't take your shirt off. And then again, if I looked that good, maybe I would. He looks a bit older than me in the face, but there's actually a video going around on Instagram and YouTube where Billy Idol is supposedly in retirement, and he keeps hearing things that suggest he should get back out and tour. And so he's touring again this summer, and he'll be at Pine Knob with Joan Jett. I'm not a huge Joan Jett fan, but I saw her previously. I saw her warm up for the Police. I believe it's the Hill Auditorium in Ann Arbor years and years and years ago. Johnny Knoxville never asks someone how much they make or who they vote for. Yeah, it's kind of like my mom used to say, never ask a woman how much she weighs either. But then again, I get people who ask questions here, but they feel like they know me, I guess, right? Oh, Ratti from Finland, has your YouTube channel ever been a conflict of interest or hindrance or such to you in the law business? No. The most that's ever happened is occasionally I'll have an attorney say, "Oh, you're the guy with the YouTube channel." So I'm drinking Gatorade, blue Gatorade, whatever flavor that is, blue. I believe George Carlin had a whole monologue he did about blue food. Blue food. Mark Miller, blue. Steve says Rod Stewart and Billy Joel playing in Cincinnati this summer, but isn't Billy Joel also playing with somebody else? Because I had somebody ask me that, and I said I've seen Billy Joel live, but I saw him way before he was big. He warmed up for the Beach Boys. And I'll admit I'm not a huge Billy Joel fan. I'm just not. But Helium says a 1099 NEC is for contract labor. Contract labor. Charles Widmore saw the Wallflowers with Sheryl Crow. Was pretty good. Josh Homan, who cares? I dated a bigger girl. Wonderful person. No, my mom was saying you don't ask a woman how much she weighs because sometimes they're sensitive to that. Or maybe it's just my mom. I don't know. My mom also said you never look in a woman's purse. And to this day, someone can ask me, "Hey, can you get that into my purse?" I will take the purse and hand it and say, "You get it." I don't go there. I learned. Johnny Knoxville, I'm partial to green apple Gatorade, pure crack. They've got a watermelon flavor that's also really good. But I forgot what it's called. But you know, Gatorade's got all kinds of stuff. It's when you buy the generic, blue, lemon, lime, green, red. It's like Kool-Aid, but they've got some really nice flavors. They do. Doug Jones, never ask a woman if she's pregnant, especially don't lean on it like, "Oh, I see you're pregnant." Oh, you're not. 90 knots. I saw Joan Jett this past summer, got free tickets. How is it you're always going to see these shows for free when people like me have got to pay to get in? What's up with that? Pa Rump Mike, is there a really popular rock band you just don't like? For me, it's Van Halen. Talked about Van Halen a little bit earlier. I like Van Halen, but I like their earlier stuff more. But whether you like him or not, Eddie Van Halen, there were three revolutions with the guitar. Les Paul electrified it, Jimi Hendrix distorted it, and then Van Halen did Van Halen. I mean, and many guitar players will agree with that. That if you graph the progression of the electric guitar, it's not a straight line; it's a big jump at each of those events. So, yeah, or her age, says David Phillips, another wise one. Joe Hayes says it's Billy Joel and Stevie Nicks. Somebody else pointed out also. So I know I don't know about all of them, but I know that Billy Joel and Stevie Nicks are touring together. And I know a lot of people like Stevie Nicks a lot. So Uncle Bob's is not a Billy Joel fan. Unsubscribed. I didn't say he was a bad musician. There's just something about his music that I've just never been a big fan. Never was. So Brian Fullerton, I saw Rod at the Madison Square Garden back in the 90s as a younger man. I listened to the lyrics after Wake Up Maggie, and I turned down the absolute sea of cougars that were trying to make a point with me. Okay, somebody says blue tastes like purple. Really? Johnny Quest, Kool-Aid has sugar. Wait, is Gilbert in the house? Did I miss Gilbert? See, that's what happens. Oh, she's talking about YouTubers and the pay cut. Or the cut they get of the pay. Alexander Ganaka, most underrated guitarist of all time, is Buckethead. I've talked about Buckethead before. Soothsayer. Buckethead, if you don't know who he is, look him up. It's a guy who is a guitar virtuoso. He is a guitar virtuoso. And he is so good that he wears a bucket on his head and a mask, so you can't see his face. You don't know what he looks like. Now, people do know what his real name is. It's not like it's a huge mystery. But he decided a long time ago, I am not out here to do anything but play the guitar. and he plays usually with a backing track, and then he plays the guitar, and you watch him for 30 seconds, you're like, oh my God, this guy's so good. And at one point in time, he toured with Guns N' Roses, and you can find footage of him playing guitar on stage, huge concerts with Guns N' Roses. But generally, he's a solo act, and he plays a lot of small places. He played the Token Lounge in Detroit not so long ago. I didn't see it. I wish I had. But it's an amazing show, and the guy is just so good. Brett 7284 said I wanted to chime in last week, but got here too late. So now you're chiming in. So you're chiming in on time this week, or you're late for last week, or you're early for next week. Joe Hayes says there's a lot of great music in Detroit. And there are a lot of great venues. You got your basic, Ford Field and your Comerica Park, but you got the Fox and the Fillmore downtown. You got St. Andrews Hall, Royal Oak Music Theater. You got your Pine Knob. You got your Meadowbrook. Those are outdoors, so they don't do anything in the off seasons. But in the summertime, there are so many shows. Like I said before, I saw 13 shows last year. Although I saw 2 of those in England, 11 of them were here, and I'll probably see just as many this year. So got to get out and see those shows. Kevin Lawrence says Buckethead is the modern answer to the Unknown Comic, except the Unknown Comic was not funny once he took the bag off his head. But Buckethead, like I said, you have to see him perform and understand that what he's doing is so good. Old McDonald, have you ever been to the Caju Cafe in Detroit? No, I've not. Irish Scott Lads checking in from the UP, or at least he's a Uper. Dan Boyd points out that Roy Clark and Glenn Campbell could play quite well. Yeah, it's funny because most Americans know them from Hee Haw. Hee Haw. And I had an older brother who played the guitar, and he loved watching Hee Haw. And I know this is true. He was watching for every reason there was to watch it, but he also loved watching those guys play the guitar. Sometimes when those guys started playing the guitar, I'd go get something to eat or something, get something to drink. And he's like, shh, hang on, I'm watching these guys play. Chris Cadman says, I listened to the Ides of March Vehicle last night. Good tune. Way ahead of its time, too. I forgot what year it came out, but a very, very rock and roll song quite early in the history of rock and roll. I worked at radio stations that played it. One hit wonder. Johnny Knoxville, CBGB's in New York City. Yeah, CBGB's was strange. It was a tiny club that was famous for good music, and a lot of bands played there. The Ramones, Talking Heads, and sadly, it's no longer there. But its legacy was huge, huge. Old McDonald also points out Roy Clark was great on banjo. And so is Steve Martin, by the way. I'm sure they're in different classes. Oh, boy. Johnny Knoxville, Def Leppard is legendary. Somebody else just complained about Def Leppard. I like a lot of their music. I've seen them live, and I was backstage at one of their shows, so I kind of got to go with that. I met 2 of the members of the band. So Chuck Whitehead claims that there are good-looking women on Hee Haw. Really? I didn't notice that. Oh, boy. Bob says the vehicle was 1970. See, that's even earlier than I was thinking. But yeah, that's. I mean, think of what popular music was in 1970, and ask yourself, how hard Vehicle is in terms of hard rock. Chris Cabin, Grand Funk. We've talked about them many times. They're from Flint, Michigan, originally called Grand Funk Railroad. And then Grand Trunk Railroad allegedly complained about them using the name. They dropped the railroad and just became Grand Funk, which is one of the greatest names of all time, whether you like the music or not. It's a great name, Grand Funk. Irish Scott Ladd says midget strippers are coming to Iron Mountain in February. Are they really? I mean, why not, I guess. Art S. Maxwell's in Hoboken continued CBGB's tradition for another decade. Sometimes I listen to myself says that his name is a line from Burning Down the House. I didn't catch it. I apologize. Speaking in Tongues is one of my favorite albums of all time. If you said, Steve, you name 10 albums that, you can only listen to these 10 for the rest of your life, I think Speaking in Tongues would be one of them. It's fabulous. IW, Better Late Than Never. Obvious Captain says, how do you feel about Tom Waits? I mentioned Tom Waits earlier because Tom Waits is the one who wrote Downtown Train, which is a song I'm hoping Rod Stewart does live. I love Tom Waits, but Tom Waits is in the same school as Bob Dylan, where he writes these songs and you hear his version of it. And you go, that's interesting. Then you hear somebody else performing, like, whoa, that's a great song. Go, wait, that's the same song. So Downtown Train by Tom Waits. Tom Waits wrote the song Downtown Train, which was a big hit for Rod Stewart. Bob Seger also recorded it. And then also, like, for instance, the song he wrote called On the Nickel. On the Nickel. Puddle's Pity Party does a version of it that is so good. So go to YouTube later and look up Puddle's Pity Party, that's Puddles the Clown, doing On the Nickel. And it is such an amazing song. And I've heard Tom Waits' version of it, and he doesn't care about the pop sensibility of something, but when someone else does it, it works. And there's a bunch of Bob Dylan songs like that. If you hear Dylan's version of All Along the Watchtower, it doesn't quite sound the same as Hendrix's version. But I love Tom Waits. He's a fabulous songwriter. Absolutely. So Johnny Knoxville says in Milwaukee, a place called the Unicorn, where Nirvana and Smashing Pumpkins played. Also the Odd Rock Cafe, which Gigi Allen and the Red Hot Chili Peppers played. You always hear these stories about these small bands when they're small becoming huge, and where they played when they're small. Oh, boy. Bon Gondor, ever seen Metallica in concert? No, I have not. No, I have not. David Zaradnansky says Mary Chapin Carpenter also covered Downtown Train. Winston Knowles, Steve. Oh, boy. Sometimes I listen to myself was stationed in Saudi Arabia for 90 days. Jagged Little Pill was the only CD we had to listen to. That was 1995. I still can't listen to it. Oh, Jay Klein. I was at the Dead Kennedy show at the Jockey Club. Blissful Nessence. Have you heard Disturbed's cover of Sound of Silence? Yes, I have. David Downey Fowler says, I love that your live stream has become about music and bands. I might do a live stream in a bit and chat about the law. You should. We should figure out some way to do a dual live stream where you'll be over there in the London area and I'll be over here in the America area, and we'll discuss these kinds of things. Because quite frankly, when I talk about stuff, when it comes to music, I mean, I listen to it, but I don't know anything about it. Yeah, stop spam. Man DM says Puddle's Pity did a mashup of Pinball Wizard and Folsom Prison Blues. Yes, he does several of those. He mashed up Hello by Adele and Telephone Line by ELO. And I saw him perform live at the Royal Music Theater. And he's doing all of this like it's almost a karaoke. He's got a music track, and then he just does what he does. And some of the stuff he does is pure genius. And some people have a hard time taking him seriously because he dresses like a clown, literally. He's 6'8", and I got my picture taken when he's towering over me. And what he does, he's got a great voice, but he's got a great musical sensibility, and he figures out ways to mash songs together where you're like, I can't believe this works, and it does. David Dominic Fowler said we could do that on Zoom, But could we then broadcast it live on a YouTube channel, or would we have to record it and do it that way? I this is probably a technical discussion we could have off camera. Blissful Nessence, one of the few who pronounced my moniker correctly. It's just a matter of reading all those little tiny letters that are run together. G. Keyman says you can use StreamYard or Restream. I suppose I could. Fly Chomper Fly says the lead singer of the Ides of March also sang Eye of the Tiger for Survivor. It wouldn't surprise me because a lot of those people you'll hear about jumped around from band to band like that. Puddle's Pity Party right now is touring with Weird Al. Yeah, and I've seen that coming up. Bill Thomas. He's playing at Pine Knob. I'm not sure because I like Weird Al, but I like Puddles more. But I saw Puddles in such a small, intimate space. I'm curious to know if it'll translate in front of tens of thousands of people. Robert Torre, I went to see ELO recently, and they were great. Got a favorite tune they played. I love the entire show, but my favorite song by them is Telephone Line. I also like Mr. Blue Sky, which they closed with. And Telephone Line is the one which I mentioned was actually at an oldies station I worked at in the 80s. And I'm like, I'm not that old yet. David Downey Fowler says, yes, easy to live stream Zoom. I'll call you later tomorrow. Okay, we'll work that out, you and I. And we'll have to calibrate the clocks so that we don't have you up at 1 o'clock in the morning or something. Old McDonald Has a Car says, I think Toto's debut album was their best. That was a good album. I remember that album very, very well. Chris Cadman, have you ever represented a musician or band in court? Yes, I have, but nobody you've ever heard of. I mean, I know a guy who's a bass player in a local band, and but it had nothing to do with the music or anything like that, though. So that's why it doesn't really, stick out. Canadian Robot Lady is here. Hello, and live streamers. Thank you. We'll be here for another 25 minutes, my friend. Old McDonald Has a Farm says, Out of the Blue, my favorite ELO album. I liked a New World Record just a little bit more, but it's close. It's close. I don't normally rank stuff like this is good and this is better than that. It's do I listen to it or not, right? So. Gilbert spotted this Canadian Robot Lady. Fly Chomper Fly, I was backstage when the doors were busted on stage. You were backstage at the radio station. Was that in Florida? I seem to recall they got in trouble a couple times. I think the famous example, wasn't that in Florida? Or am I wrong about that? Fly Chomper Fly says New Haven. Okay. Sometimes I listen to myself. I started listening to more Heart lately. I saw Heart live in Detroit last summer. David Dominic Fowler says hello to Heather and says we share a king. So I feel like I'm saying hi to someone of my tribe. And don't forget that the Canadian Robot Lady has her own channel. So click on her icon, go to her channel, and subscribe. Alexander Ganaka, we brought out the Beastie Boys or Rage Against the Machine. Not today. We've mentioned the Beastie Boys before. And I like a lot of their stuff. Parum Mike says, why is the people sue others for stealing music decades after the supposedly copied song is released? I don't know. And that's a wonderful question. I'll tell you why. The song Down Under by Men at Work has that the flute whistle sound in it, the little flute signature melody. And a guy came by like 25 years later and said, That's mine. And he had recorded a song with that melody in it. And the courts said, yeah, obviously. And so they had to pay the guy. But the interesting thing is that the statute of limitations only goes back so far. And so the guy lost out on all the royalties that preceded that. And it's like, why did he wait so long? And don't forget Taurus, right, by Spirit, where they claimed that Led Zeppelin had stolen Stairway to Heaven from them. They filed that lawsuit like 30 years after Stairway to Heaven came out. And again, you didn't notice the similarity back then. And I think what happens a lot of times is I think a lot of people, when it first happens, they're not sure about it. Or if these musicians collaborate, they might be friends, they might not think about it. And sometimes it's the estate of somebody. So one of the greatest stories you can read about is involving the song "The Lion Sleeps Tonight," the big hit song for the Tokens, and it was often credited as being a classic song that had no known authorship. It was traditional, and actually it was stolen from a guy in Africa. Oh boy. Tin Pan Alley says Weemowa. 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 And apparently it's been used in a lot of movies too. And that's where movies and commercials are where a lot of old songs get revived in terms of the amount of money they create. What of says Tom Lear, genius comedy musician, publicly released all rights to his songs, lyrics, and music to the public domain. Hazel Montgomery, what is a juke as in a jukebox? I think it's a reference. Isn't it a reference to a style of music, like dance music or something? Because I know that like Southside Johnny and the Amboy, not the Amboy, Southside Johnny, talks about the jukes. So, but yeah, jukebox. The Asbury Jukes, as opposed to Amboy Dukes. That's what's getting in my head. Yeah, Fly Chomper Fly says Lion Sleeps Tonight was originally written by Solomon Lindy. Yeah, Bob Lablas says quite a few songs that I hear riffs that are definitely stolen from another earlier song, and I cannot find the song that I hear. But also, it's a question of how much you take. And I've always been bothered, for instance, by Billy Don't Lose That Number, and Ricky Don't Lose That Number. And I wish it would rain, or I wish it would rain down on me. Or I fought the law, or I fight authority. And you look at these and go, did it not occur to you? There's a similarity there. Yeah, Randall Munn says a juke joint has a jukebox. But what's the word juke mean? What's it? Don't make me look it up. Oh, this should be easy. Juke, right? Hang on. Juke, juke. To make a sham move to mislead an opponent, like he juked, but that's like movement in sports. What is juke slang for? A juke joint, according to this, comes from Creole, and it's a mispronounced word that came to mean at one point wicked or disorderly. So a juke joint might seem to be a rather confused and that kind of place. Cody Prine says Van Halen never got any money from his soul in Michael Jackson's song "Beat It." Yeah, it's because he actually didn't want any. He actually he was asked, "Do you want?" And he said no. He considered he was doing a favor for a friend. And Mighty Guitar Mods does say the word juke and jukebox comes from the Gaul word juke, which means body or disorderly. The term jukebox originated from juke joints, which were small restaurants in the 1930s where people could dance, drink, and eat. Padre says Steamboat Willie is now in the public domain. Yeah, a bunch of those things are slowly going into the public domain. Billy, Don't Be a Hero. Is it the Haywoods who did that song? One hit wonder. Robert Lee asks Canadian Robot Lady, remember Aldo Nova? Watching a live stream of a Canadian ship called the Algo Nova. It's going to Sarnia, upbound at Belle Isle. Harry Seldon says Eddie did more than the solo. He redid the whole musical arrangement. Well, there's a whole bunch of talk about that because also the guy from Toto played the guitar on it. And also Quincy Jones was heavily involved in it as well. I know at one point in time, they shipped it over to the record company, and the record company said, this is too hard. You've got to soften it up a bit. And it was the guy from Toto who redid some of that. So I know that generally speaking, Eddie is credited with the solo, and the other guitar work is the guy from Toto. Duke of Earl, another one-hit wonder that Johnny Knoxville calls out from back in the day. Mark Miller says, I thought juke was a reference to a specific dance movement. It could have been, because remember that the sports move where they say a guy's running the field and he jukes his opponent. Maybe. Yeah, Aldo Nova's Fantasy. Canadian rock and roll. Bob Blah Blah says the next Olympics will have juke dancing. And that woman from Australia will somehow get back in and do her kangaroo moves. Yeah, Steve Lukather, Cyberdoc, the guitar player from Toto. He's been on Rick Beato's channel and talking about playing guitar in Toto and then also studio work he's done for other people. Several people have called that out. Cyberdoc and Dan Boyd, thank you very much. Steve G, sorry I'm late. Well, you got 14 minutes left. So Johnny Knoxville says we have football coming up. I stopped watching when the Lions lost. Oh boy. Harry Seldon, did you get Steelers Wheel or Steelers Wheel for the one-hit bands now? Stuck in the middle with you. Remember when that was all over the radio? Cyberdoc, everyone have an awesome weekend after the show. Go Eagles. Tim Britton, I can't find Ben. Yeah, Ben's not always visible from this angle. Trying to remember where he is on the set. I'm sure he's back there somewhere. Peace out, everyone. Cyberdoc. Opinion Rat says he was in a Hard Rock Cafe in Los Angeles, and they said in the menu that they had the gold record from Duke of Earl. I looked up, and there in the booth was the record. Wow. Tin Pan Alley Standards. I saw the original Toto live in 1979. Awesome concert. Yeah, they were huge. They were gigantic. They were huge. One of the biggest debut albums for quite a while there. Tim Britton, anyone harass you about the chair yet? It's come up a few times. Okay, I'm missing the first half of some conversations. I'm like, I'm not sure what these people are talking about. Johnny Knoxville says you should use the mic from your original YouTube videos for live streams. You mean the one that's got the ball on it, the Blue Nessie? That's the one that broke. If you look at my set now, it's to my right as I'm sitting there. It's next to the two big radio tubes. I'm trying to think if I had any mics before that. That would have been visible on camera. So Art S is stuck in the middle with you. It's tough to listen if you've seen Reservoir Dogs. Yeah, a movie can do that and imprint an image upon you so that when you hear the when you hear the song, it reminds you of the movie. Yeah, Johnny, it broke a couple weeks ago. And that's where I got this new setup. There's a really weird plug I had to get for this microphone, And so I actually have two of these microphones. I've got this one, and there's one over here on the desk that you can't see, but that's the one that I use on my regular videos. But they're identical. I love these microphones. Fred Blowers, have you seen the bad horror movie starring Winnie the Pooh? No, I have not. And I've had people complain because I had somebody go, "Hey, Steve, it's really bad. The stuff's going into the public domain." And I go, "No, not really. Like, who cares?" And somebody goes, "They're making horror movies out of Winnie the Pooh." And I'm like, "What?" I didn't know that. Johnny Knoxville, do you remember Letterman's mic? I think it must have been a prop. It was so ridiculous looking. Well, I don't know if you remember, but Letterman had a show where he actually installed the microphone because he finally picked one he liked. And a technician was going to install it before the show started. And David said, "No, let's do it during the show." So he had an overhead boom mic, which, by the way, is actually what's probably picking up most of the sound. And the guy came out and drilled a hole in the desk and installed the microphone. But I think it's a real microphone. I know the microphone that like Howard Stern uses, an extremely expensive microphone. And some radio stations use very, very expensive ones too. But yeah, you know, it ain't the microphone. Usually it's the voice behind it. Mighty Guitar Mods, speaking of mics, is that a Shure? You mean behind me back there? That right there is a Shure, yes. This right here is an Electro Voice RE20. Yeah, Old McDonald Has a Car says that Stuck in the Middle of You is sung by Jerry Rafferty, who then later on had a solo career too. Joe Hayes, the cookies are baked, kitchen's almost done, dog snoozing in the family room, the lines are done, all's right in the world. Oh. Code Mr. Beats, I have an old RE20 that I rebuilt and had powder coated. I should send, yes, you should send me some pictures. I'd like to see it. I wish somebody could sell me one of these with no guts in it. I just think they're cool looking microphones. I'd love to put one behind me. Although I guess at that point you might get sick of seeing them all over the place, right? Tin Pan Alexander's Neumann. I don't have any Neumann mics. Other people might use them. I think they're very expensive, aren't they? Devin Bound Rush Limbaugh's golden mic. I believe at one point he simply had one of these that was gold coated. So Southern Torn, imagine if Toto the band replaced Toto the dog in a production of The Wizard of Oz. Toto, I don't think we're in Kansas anymore. And of course, there's Kansas the band too. Cody Prine, Vanilla Ice versus Queen, and David Bowie for the Under Pressure Ice Ice Baby riff. And the sad part about that was it was so obvious. And everybody's like, what? But Johnny Knoxville, what mic is that you are using now? This, the Electro Voice RE20. Or were you joking? Oh, boy. Steve Schritz, remember the long, skinny mics they used on game shows? Is it Gene Rayburn? And he'd have this microphone that was like this thin, but it'd be like this long with a little tiny ball on the end of it. And you're like, okay. And who was it that won the bald-headed man contest in 1960? So, Fly Chomper Fly says we used RE20s in radio all the way back in the early 70s. Great mic, but the 20s in radio all the way back in the early 70s. Great mic, but the foam disintegrated. What, the foam inside there? I'll be curious about that. I bought both of these brand new. This one here is about, meaning I bought it about 6 months now. And the other one I've had for 4 or 5 years. But I use them at radio stations many, many times. Never had any trouble with them at all. David Dominic Fowler says Howard Stern's Neumann is the same one you used at my place, the TLM 103. I should realize I've used a TLM 103 Neumann when I shot the video at David Downey Fowler's studio. It was the video about the fact that they made a Wile E. Coyote movie finished it and then parked it, and they're never going to show it publicly for tax reasons. And after I did the video, I got like 50 people going, I don't know why you did the story. They do this all the time. You must be stupid. All kinds of things happen all the time. Doesn't mean it's not news or fun to talk about. Dan Boyd, crank up the NWA. Straight outta Compton. One of the greatest songs ever performed. Lion Zookeeper says Kid Rock sampled tons of music that was around the changes in laws about sampling music. But he also did bring a band with him. He put a band together when he got a record contract. And I remember hearing interviews with him early in his career, and he was talking about, he's like, yeah, but I got a band. Because a lot of rappers were just going out and rapping to tracks or something. So don't forget, Kid Rock came from Michigan. Oh. Dan Boyd says Howard Stern is not much without shock value. Have you listened to him lately? On Sirius, he routinely does long-form interviews that are masterpieces. I heard him do a long-form interview with Elton John. I heard him do a long-form interview with Billy Joel. I'm trying to remember who else. I've heard him do these interviews where he literally talks to me for like over an hour, and his questions are so well prepared, and they are. I hesitate to say I don't think I've seen any long-form interviews as good as the stuff he does, because even on like 60 Minutes, even if they do a whole show about somebody, they have cut it and spliced it and edited it, and he'll do a live interview with somebody where they'll literally start talking, and 75 minutes later they're done, and they've covered so much ground, and what he does is so good. Many people only remember Howard Stern from 25 years ago, and they heard him on their local radio station. So very, very different thing. Very, very different thing. Fly Chomper Fly, I bought a new RE20, but you have one now. Talking about the old ones. Gilbert says Howard is much better now than before. Joel Jensen, Boston. Tom Scholes is a musical mastermind. And one of my favorite stories, and the story is told so many different ways, but Tom Scholes basically recorded the first Boston album in a studio in his basement, or at least in his house. And he put it together to where it was very, very close to what got released. And it was turned down by record companies who didn't understand what it was. So there's like, I keep hearing feedback. What's the feedback we're getting there? Oh. Daniel Kester, before it's too late for when this ends, everyone have a good week. You got about 3 more minutes to go. Two Left Thumb says the Fugees' Ready or Not was the worst ripoff using Ania's Bodachia. But there's also a song Ready or Not by a group out of Philadelphia. I forgot the name. And there was a lot of those bands that they'll claim, well, we're just paying tribute to them, but they'll steal the entire hook, the entire melody, and it's like, oh boy. Canadian Robot Lady says, I enjoy watching the Stern YouTube videos so you can see what's happening in the studio. The visual makes it often. And I will admit there's some parts of his show I don't care for. I don't care for it when he's got Sal the stockbroker is ripping on Gary, picking on, how bad Gary's teeth look. I don't care about that. I really don't. But the interviews in particular are very, very good. Robert Torrey says, so Stern is kind of like David Frost now. There's a different sensibility to what he's talking about. But I do think that many people don't know what he actually does these days. They just remember what he did before. Mike Torello, thanks, Steve. Enjoyed the show. Alexander Gunaka, has anyone accidentally heard an R. Kelly song since everything happened? How did we all miss it? I can't say I've ever heard an R. Kelly song in my life. I haven't avoided it. I'm just not sure where I'd hear it. Sometimes I listen to myself. Thanks for a great Sunday afternoon. Well, thanks for checking in and reminding me that line is from a Talking Heads song. Oh, Carl's Corner says the game starts soon. What game is that, my friend? Gordon861, I arrived just in time to say bye. Bob blah blah, go team. Go team. Yeah, football. Jay Blue, thanks, Steve, for the live streams. Enjoyed as always. Robert Torre, is this billable? No, it's not. No, it's not. Dan Boyd, Linda Ronstadt in the mid to late 70s seemed to only do covers, but she made them her own. She covered 3 songs by Elvis Costello at one point, and it made me angry. I don't care now, but at the time it made me angry. Oh, boy. Lion Zookeeper, have a wonderful week, everyone. Tim Britton, I root for the refs. They never lose. G. Keeman, everyone have a great day. And Steve Lehto, too. Thank you. I appreciate that. Irie, I'm psyched for March. Well, we got another month to go. Harry Seldon, Ohio State can claim to be champs, but Michigan still beat them. And Canadian Robot Lady, I'll let you do it. Same time, same place, next week. Have a good one, everyone. CRL out, and I'll see you later. Bye-bye.